All right, it is 8:30 a.m. We are going to go ahead and get started here. I'm just going to have some opening remarks and then hand the microphone over to Nancy, who is going to present her tips and advice to us today. We have over 200 participants, so we may not get to all the questions that you all post during or after the webinar, but we will try to answer as many as we can. So please continue to post question and answers in the Q&A section of the webinar. With that, let's go. Let me get started here and introduce the webinar. So good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining. This is the Asian American Chamber of Commerce GovCon webinar series. As we all know, our guest today is Ms. Nancy Peters, Vice President at CACI International Incorporated. And the topic we're discussing is working with large primes, how to be an attractive subcontractor.
Thank you to the wonderful speaker for supporting the government contracting series. The mission of the Asian American Chamber of Commerce is to encourage, facilitate, and support the economic growth and sustainability of the Greater Washington, D.C. area community by building bridges and serving as a resource for the APA business community. And AACC achieves this mission through business networking programs, summits, expos, business development workshops and seminars, and other special programs and events. We provide a platform for our members to network and market their products and services. For companies seeking to diversify their supplier base, AACC members are a great place to start. So the benefits for being an AACC member includes numerous networking events, high visibility in the Asian business community, and representation of minority and the woman-owned business community, reciprocal benefits with the member partners and the many other organizations, professional mentorship and volunteer opportunities, and up-to-date information on public policy, news, and events. There are sponsorship opportunities. Feel free to contact us at event@asian-americanchamber.org for membership and sponsorship information.
And I'm going to do a quick disclaimer because we get asked this question a lot afterwards. So I just want to remind everyone that anything you hear on this webinar is for informational purposes only. Please use your best judgment on how you use the information. Let me introduce again our speaker today, Ms. Nancy Peters. She's the current Vice President of Business Development and Small Business Advocate for CACI's Small Business Advocacy Office. She has more than 20 years of experience building business partnerships at CACI, and I think, Nancy, you're celebrating your 25th year at the company. Is that correct?
24th.
24th, okay. Nancy and I worked together when I was a proposal manager at CACI many, many years ago, and I think one of the best business developers that I've ever worked with. So I really am excited about this opportunity to have you as our guest today. Nancy,
Thank you.
Nancy was the previous Vice President of CACI's Civilian Agency Group, supporting the Department of Homeland Security, Justice, GSA, among many other agencies. She's active in many of the professional organizations around our area. With that, no further ado, I'm going to say let's hand it over and learn all the tips and advice that Nancy has to offer, because she's the person who deals with small businesses every day. All right, well, I'm handing over the microphone and going on mute for now.
Thank you, Rena. Thank you for inviting me. I always enjoy the Asian American Chamber of Commerce events when I participate. I have participated in several over the past couple of years, and I am glad that you're all here to listen. Some of you are pretty experienced, and this information is going to sound kind of like BD 101 to you, but hopefully it will be helpful to you. As a large prime, and there are a number of us out there, we deal with many small businesses every day. And in fact, it's not unusual for me to hear from maybe 3 or 4 a day. So we do a lot of sorting and vetting and trying to figure out which companies are going to be the best partners for us on these large bids that we go after. Up front, just some basic things. One of the wonderful things about the federal government, and I've been marketing to the federal government well over 20 years, let's say over 30, is that it is a very large, complex organization, and there are many, many opportunities out there. But that's also one of the terrible things about marketing to the federal government. There are so many opportunities. You can run yourself crazy trying to figure out which ones to go after or how to cover multiple agencies. Most of the people I work with in the federal government, and I've worked with hundreds of them who are very, very wonderful, intelligent, hardworking people, and very polite, which means you could spend a lot of time talking to the wrong person. And so you need to do a lot of vetting yourself in terms of who you select to go after. So you need to target an agency. If you do a department, pick out a couple of agencies within that department and understand the mission of that agency. That's very important because the work that they do is supporting the mission. Now, you may be providing something that's more kind of backroom support. It might be help desk, it might be cyber, it might be IT services, but you've got to understand the relation to the mission of the agency. Research the agency and the budget. That information is all public out there. It's public information. You can find it. Develop a marketing and call plan. And again, this is just to focus on this select agency. You need to network and build relationships. And you might say, well, how do I do that? Well, there are lots of ways to do it. One of them is to participate in AACC events, or AFCEA events, or other public industry associations, IAC, there's a number, where you can meet other people who are also marketing to the federal government. And of course, most importantly, you need to build relationships with that particular agency. Where do you start? Well, find the small business advocate. Every agency has a small business advocate. The larger agencies have several. You need to meet them. You need to introduce yourself to them. You need to build relationships with trusted teaming partners. And again, you can do that through associations. You can do it by getting acquainted with some other people on supporting these agencies. Then the basics, you need to have a Dun & Bradstreet number, a CAGE code, and NAICS codes. NAICS codes are very important to us in terms of vetting, because often when we get a large proposal, and I'm talking about proposals that are 100 million and higher, one of the requirements is that the contractor have certain NAICS codes represented. So we're often searching for the right NAICS code. So that is important. And ensure I've got SAM database, it's beta.sam, is up to date and accurate, and that you identify your small business certifications. A lot of the larger opportunities as agencies are going to go to a large prime who will have a series of subcontractors. Research the prime, find out who's at that agency. That also is public information. Contact the small business office at the prime site. One of the things that I do as a small business advocate for CACI is kind of play traffic cop. People contact me, and then I contact the BD or capture team, or if it's a current opportunity, I can contact a PM. But that's the best place to start. Now remember, large primes are not missionaries. They are business people, and they are very opportunity driven. The opportunity is their focus. That's how they're paid. So you need to think in terms of what particular opportunities are available at that agent, and is this prime pursuing them? You need to know enough about the prime to tailor your elevator speech. Boy, that's an old-fashioned term, but certainly what you're going to say in the first 2 or 3 minutes to the situation and to the prime. Try to bring value to the meeting and new information that can set you apart. I do lots of matchmaking, probably 40 or more events a year, and I have a 5 to 15-minute window to talk to somebody. And unfortunately, many small businesses come up to me and say, well, we do IT. Well, that's nice, but that doesn't give me any valuable information, and it certainly doesn't discriminate you from anybody else. If we see there's a match, that you have a skill set or a past performance that a fit for what we want to go after, then you need to follow through and follow through quickly and thoroughly. If I have to ask a small business 3 or 4 times to send me a basic capability statement or send me past performance, I'm less interested, unfortunately. And you need to attend small business outreach events like this one. The federal agencies have events, primes have events. We certainly have open houses annually. The PTAX, AACC has events. All of those are efficient ways for you to meet several people. If you go to an event like the U.S. Women's Chamber of Commerce has a lot of events at George Mason University, there's an efficiency to that. It could take you months, if not years, to contact the key small business people in many federal agencies. If you go to one of these events, particularly the larger ones, you're going to see maybe a dozen agency small business representatives and another dozen or so prime representatives. So there's great efficiency in that. And even though it may only be a 5 or 10 minute or 15-minute conversation, there's a chance for you to exchange a card, make an impression, hopefully a good one, and then you can follow up later. Things to avoid. And I get asked this, many large primes do. People come and say, hey, what do you do? I'd like to learn about your company. Well, I really don't have time to give you a tutorial on CACI. I'm probably going to say, go look at our website. And I don't mean to be rude, but the issue is not that you learn about me from me, but that I learn about you and how you might be a fit with our company. I know this sounds unusual, but avoid starting out with your socioeconomic status first. Now, we want to know what that is. That's important. We have goals to meet, just like the government does. But we really want to know about what you can do and what you bring to the table. The socioeconomic factor, whether you're hub zone, woman-owned, SDB, whatever, that usually is not the decision maker in deciding who's going to be on a team. Please try not to say that your company can do everything. If you're a 15 or 20 person company and you say to me, I can do everything, I'm like, wow, I want to meet these people. That's not realistic and also not helpful information. Everything is too general a category. I want to know what's special about you. What is it you do that would add to this opportunity? And of course, I'd rather you not say, what can you do for me? Or do you have any spots for me? Or could I fill in right away? Those, again, are not helpful questions because I can't really identify where to put you. It's like if I say I'm a traffic cop and you come up and say, gee, I don't know where I want to go. I just want to go anywhere. We're not going to get anywhere. Do not overpromise. And do come prepared. When you go to these matchmaking events, make sure you've got business cards, make sure you've got like a one-pager maybe, or you can follow up by email with a one-pager, not too much information. And up front, you need to be able to say 2 or 3 things that make your company special. So what are we looking for? Well, one of the things that small businesses can bring to large primes that is very valuable is customer intimacy. If you come up to me and you say, hey, I've been working at this customer in this way, and I know these people, and I know how they work, and it's an agency where I'm also looking to build business, that's very interesting. Need to know that you can market and know that you can help us market on large opportunities. Another key ability is to shape or influence an opportunity. Again, that has to do with your relationships with people on a customer site. Demonstrated past performance is very important. Large primes are very risk averse, and so we want to know that you have experience in an agency. I was talking a couple of months ago with a small prime who wanted us to be on their team for an FBI task order. This was a task order where we had been the incumbent, and it became a small business set-aside, which happens. And they said, we want you to be on the team. And I was aware of this becoming small business set-aside. And I said, okay, tell me about your FBI experience. And the small business said, well, I've never worked there, but I'd like to get in there. Well, okay, but we're not going to take that risk. If we're going to subcontract to a small business, they also have to have incumbency there. That's just one of our risk-averse policies. We want you to have complementary skills and added value and some niche capabilities. If you've got a special software capability or logistics or cyber, that's helpful. Competitive pricing, I think you know we all are working with the government, and so it's not what I'd call high margin business. So we do need you to be competitive. Financial stability, track record, processes are all kind of basics. And of course, we need you to be honest with us. In terms of teaming, and again, that's what we're all looking for is teaming. You need to understand what the opportunity is and what your value is. Often I get calls from small businesses who know about a large opportunity that we're going after. They say, hey, I'd like to be on the team. My first question is, why? I need to know why you would be a valuable partner on the team. You all know this, if you've worked with the federal government at all, you need to team as early as possible. You know, the government moves at a very stately pace, and we understand that and sometimes appreciate it. Sometimes it's frustrating, but we also know that once the RFP hits the street, it's probably too late to join a team. And certainly we are working and forecasting 12 to 18 months out in our processes. And so by the time the RFP hits the street, if it's something large and we're bidding it, we've already got our team in place and we're ready to hit the road with the RFP response. We want you to develop a relationship with us. That's true if you're on the team. We want you to be transparent. We'll try to be transparent with you. That's our intent, certainly. One of the things that you need to do is, if you're talking with a prime and they're interested in adding you to the team, is you may need to make sure you have an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement in place. Now that's something the prime would provide to you. It will not come from the BD person, but it will come from the contracts office, and the BD person usually makes that request, or the capture manager. So get the NDA in place, and then a teaming agreement in place. When we submit a proposal, one of the things that we have to list in the subcontracting plan is all of our subcontractors and copies of the teaming agreements. So the teaming agreement is our commitment to have you on the team. Now, a subcontract with you does not occur until after an award. So don't expect a subcontract up front. That's not going to happen. That would not happen until after we win the deal. Everybody wants to be a strategic partner. And again, that can be a wonderful thing. But the strategic partnerships are something that occur after we have some engagements together. The partnerships must be mutually beneficial. We have to have a good experience, or 2 or 3, in order to have a good relationship. You know, I've said this before, but partnering on a big opportunity is kind of like getting into a marriage. It is a long-term relationship. It's important. You know your partner. You shouldn't jump into bed after a cup of coffee. Pardon my raunchy joke. Anyway, there is an advantage for the small business in these strategic partnerships because we can together develop strong customer relationships. As you know, we're interested in good, strong small partners because we've got goals to meet. We have small business subcontracting plans we've got to submit, and there are opportunities where we can prime on small business set-asides. I can talk a little bit about that later. As a small business, certainly getting into the federal market, you can reduce a lot of your risk by subbing to a large business. It also gives you a chance to learn a whole lot more about how the federal government works. Subbing to a large business is the quickest way to accumulate past performance with federal agencies. Your experience counts. Everything you do as a subcontractor counts just as much as if you were a prime. Again, strategic relationships are something that develop over time, often after several engagements. We have a small business database. All large primes have small business databases. And in our database, we have everybody who has registered who wants to do business with us, but we also have several thousand, I think about 3,000 small businesses who are current subcontractors to us. So in that database record, we know that they are our current subcontractor, we know what contract they're on, and the PMs put in an evaluation. So if you're doing work for us and you're doing well, that company or other companies that have good ratings by us are some of the first we're going to go to put on other teams because we like to use companies that we have a good track record with. Well, this is kind of a recap, but I will remind you once again, you need to target an agency, preferably one where you've got experience. Identify the opportunity. I can't stress that enough. It's really important that you come to us with a specific opportunity in mind. This is a tough business, and it's especially tough these days. We don't have time for kind of general conversations and hope we might bump into something that would work out together. So when you come to me or any other large prime, have a very specific agency and opportunity in mind. Make sure you've already contacted the small business office at the agency, and then contact the small business office at the prime. You can go to the website and find the small business site pretty easily. Understand what the opportunity is. Again, it's not enough to say, gee, this is really big and I'd love to be on the team. No, it's really big, and we need to know what you would add to the team. Understand the opportunity, lay out very specifically what it is you want to do. The more specific you can be about an opportunity and the more knowledge you have, of course, the more interested we're going to be in following through with teaming arrangements. Try to initiate teaming discussions early. As I said earlier, once the RFP hits, it is too late. So it means a lot of planning ahead. And for a small business, sometimes that's tough because there's a limit to how long you can wait for business to happen. But you do need to initiate those conversations early. The other thing you need to do is realize that if you don't get the response you want, and there are many times you can't or won't, then you need to move on to the next one, the next prime or the next opportunity. You mustn't take your no's personally. One of the best bits of sales advice I got many, many years ago at Martin Marietta, back when Lockheed Martin was Martin Marietta, was it takes 20 no's to get to a yes. So every time somebody says no to you, you should not be downtrodden. You should realize, hey, I'm getting closer to a yes, okay? One other bit of advice about timing. What if you hear that a large prime wins a big one? And that's usually out there in all the federal rags and on the street. Certainly, when we win some big opportunities, and we've had some big wins lately, which we're happy about, I immediately get an influx of small businesses saying, hey, I'm going to be on that team. I heard you won. I heard it's big. I'm going to be on the team. Well, unfortunately, that's probably not going to be real valuable information at that point, because when we bid a large opportunity and we win it, we have already got a small business team in place on our team, and we have made a commitment to them to use them on this opportunity, and we want to honor that commitment. And so we're not going to ignore our current subcontractors and add somebody new. Well, as time goes on, opportunities change, they expand, they change direction, and it's possible that a year from now, or maybe 18 months from the point of when, we might need some new subcontractors. So you're going to have to put that in a tickler file and call us later. Rena, do I have time for a couple more notes?
Yes, please.
Okay. Now, I've talked a lot about what large primes are looking for and how we want to have good small business partners on our team. And by the way, that's what we're evaluated on as a large prime. We don't get any credit for being on your small business team, but if you're on our team, that's how we're counted. If you have a large opportunity, and there are lots of large small business opportunities out there, small business set-asides that are 50 or 100 million or higher, there are some questions you need to ask yourself, and I'm going to ask you if you come to me, if you want to talk about being a prime on an opportunity, a set-aside opportunity. First of all, I'm going to want to know if you have presence at the customer. And what is the work you're providing them? What kind of work? Have you met the contracting officer? And so you're positioned and they know you're interested. Is there an incumbent? If it's us, I'm probably going to know. If it's another prime, we need to know who it is and how well they are positioned. Do you know the level of effort? You know, we're very focused on large opportunities. So I want to know if it's 50 or 100 million or higher opportunity. Do you have an idea of how many people are going to be used on the opportunity? Do you have a dollar value? Go back to my $50 to $100 million mark. Do you have an idea of what percentage CACI or any large prime would play on your team? If you're coming to me about a big opportunity and you say, hey, I'll give you 1 or 2 slots, I'm sorry. we are in a position where we need to go after larger opportunities, and I would not be able to get internal resources to support that. Do you have past performance related to the effort? And do you have some resources to lead and write the proposal? If we're on a team, we may support you, but if you're the prime, you have to lead that effort. And then we would need to know what expectations you have for us. Those are just questions that I'm probably going to ask, and I think any large business would ask. Rena, do you have questions?
We have a lot of questions that have come in. I'm going to just tackle a few of them because they do repeat themselves. So I'm going to give you a few here. One of the questions most often asked here in our Q&A box is experience as the personal experience of owners of companies. They've been in the agency, they're retired from the agency, retired government employees, they know the agency and they have formed companies. Is that past performance sufficient and acceptable?
Somewhat. Yeah, I would say certainly if you're a new business starting out who's come out of the government and you don't have current past performance as that company, yes, your experience as a government person is valuable to us. We certainly see that in the DoD community. You know, CACI does a lot of DoD and intel work, and we hire a lot of veterans and SDVOSBs who are coming out of the government. And so, yes, we're interested in that experience because, as I said earlier, customer intimacy is very valuable to us. So what I do, certainly with some of these vets, and we work with the Veterans Institute for Procurement, which is an excellent training organization for veterans coming out of the government and starting their businesses, is I say, send me your resume. describe some of the projects you've been on, particularly if they are relevant to what the government is procuring for. So yeah, we can start there, and certainly that government experience is acceptable and valuable.
Very good, thank you. Another question I think that more commonly asked than anything else. You have established relationships with certain subcontractors. How does a new company then stand out and get your attention?
Well, that's tough. That's what I've been talking about. It is coming to us with specific opportunities about an agency and with some unique capabilities. You know, we do a lot in the world of Agile. We do a lot in the world generally of ERP, and we have some very large projects in that area. But if you've got some unique agency experience there, you know, we may be able to take on that additional experience. The other thing is if you have some newer capability that the government is beginning to work with. As I said, Agile, and of course, those of you who are technical out there know that Agile is not the newest technology out there, but the government is really jumping on the Agile wagon, and that's a good thing. But if you have experience with ServiceNow or some of the other tools that are out there that the government's beginning to use, let us know that right up front. In some areas where we do work like UAV capabilities, other kinds of aerospace capabilities, I'm interested in seeing that because it's not a newer area for us, but a growing area, and I can certainly put you in touch with people to find out if there is interest, but it's tough. I will tell you, when I do database searches, I search the whole database, so I'm looking for all companies that have relevant NAICS codes, agency experience, and technology. And so you certainly have a shot from that perspective if you're registered.
So quick question as a follow-up to registering. One of the questions that has come in is, after we register in the small business database, what next? How do we actually start building the relationship?
Okay. I always say to people, you got to register, you got to register, you got to register, you got to be there so I can find you, particularly if you're a hub zone, because that's something we're often looking for. But the reality is registering in the database, and our database isn't as big as a lot of them, but I have over 10,000 companies in there. It's a little bit like buying a lottery ticket. And I don't mean to be unpleasant about it, but that's the truth. But I do want you there so I can find you. And I do want you to have specific skill sets in there. I actually read some database entries recently. I'm not sure why. I need to get a life. But companies put in things like, we're a really good company, and the customer really loves us, and we always deliver. And those are good things. But think about the database engine. It is a cold-hearted beast, and it's looking for very specific things like NAICS codes and technical expertise and names of agencies. So as you register, make sure what you put in there is something that a database engine is going to be looking for. Then the other thing is you need to follow up with a small business person at that prime. If you register, then send me an email and say, hey, I've registered in the database. Here's my capabilities, because I don't go read all the database entries. Send me an email with an overview of your capabilities and a note about why you think your company would be of special interest to us. Is there a specific opportunity? Is there some new skill set that you have or some capability you know we're looking for?
Very
but
good.
You got to get our attention, okay?
Thank you. And I know I want to be respectful of your time, but this is too interesting. So if Nancy, do you have a few more minutes for us?
Yeah, I'm not going anywhere.
Okay, this is a good question. Beyond Prime and Sub, Does CACI participate in CTAs, joint ventures, mentor-protege relationships?
Okay, we certainly participate in BPAs, more as a prime. JVs very carefully, although we do participate in some JVs. Now, we are an active participant in the SBA ASMPP program, which I hope you all know about, their mentor protege program. And they've got a lot of mentor proteges in there. But the important part for us to participate in that is, in order to form a JV, you need to be a mentor in the mentor protege program. And we do very carefully analyze JVs. We have certainly been in a number over the years. It needs to be a very large opportunity, and as a large prime and as a sub on a JV, then we need to know. I mean, the good thing is our experience is counted, but we need to know how that's going to count in the relationship. The JVs with SBA are unpopulated, which means there isn't a particular company assigned as the lead. BPAs, certainly we participate in them. If you have a BPA and there are many other companies on the BPAs, we're not going to be eager to join that BPA, because it's like an IDIQ. You don't know what opportunities are going to come out or when they're going to come out. And if it's an IDIQ and there are 20 small businesses as prime and you want me to be on your team, the odds are just not good enough. What was the other one you asked about? Oh, mentor protege.
Mentor protege, yes.
I mentioned the SBA program, but on the SBA program, large primes are only allowed to have 3 companies who are their proteges, and we have 3, so we're at capacity. And those agreements last 3 years, I believe, and we're not close to phasing out on those. We have 1 DHS protege. DHS has their own program. Many agencies have many civilian agencies have transferred their small business program to the SBA program, but DHS continues to have their own, and DHS often requires on large bids that large primes have proteges. So we usually have a DHS protege or 2. Again, they have a 3-year program. Requirements are similar to SBA. In fact, I think SBA modeled their program after DHS, but don't tell SBA that. And then the DOD mentor protege program is where we are most active.
Okay.
The DOD mentor protege program was 3 years. It has now been changed to 2 years. That program is reimbursed by DOD, but there are lots of parameters to becoming a DOD protege. We have 4 right now, and we have a couple in the queue. The DOD mentor protege program has just been, as of January, I think, reauthorized and refunded. So funding for new proteges has not been released yet. You know, we've turned in white papers and we're waiting. One of the things about the DOD program is you need to have an agency who is interested in you being in the program. It's not just enough that the prime nominates you. For the DOD program, the prime makes the nomination, and for us, we have parameters. In order to be a part of the mentor protege program, you need to be a subcontractor to us for at least a year. There are a few exceptions, but rare. And that's because we want to get to know you. Remember, I mentioned the cup of coffee? The mentor protege is even more like a marriage. So we need to know you well and understand how you work, and you understand how we work. So you need to be a subcontractor for a year. You need to have a minimum of 3 million annually in revenue and 10 staff members. And the reason I say that is, if we're going to be in a mentor-protege relationship, we're going to want to provide some training and other joint activities. And if you're a 1 or 2 man shop on billing somewhere, you're not going to have time to participate in those activities. So those are just kind of our bottom line. Also, even though I run the mentor-protege program, I don't choose the proteges. The proteges must be nominated from our operations or line organization because they're the ones who are going to take you under their wing and help develop you as a company.
Thank you for that. And I'm going to give you one last question. I do want to remind all participants that this webinar is being recorded. You will receive a copy of the slides and the recording. But one final question here is, if the prime approaches a small business, should the small business request work share up front? This is a recurring question that we get at Proposal Helper is, well, it's a large company. I don't want to force them. They might leave me. So talk about work share and how does a large prime see request for work shares?
Well, we get nervous. And part of it is we can't guarantee, and certainly if we sign up with a teaming agreement, it's hard for us to guarantee, yes, you're going to get 3% or 5% or whatever. Because, as you know, in the government, things change, requirements change, they expand or they diminish, and particularly on an IDIQ, those task orders don't always come out as expected. So we're extremely hesitant to say, this is your percentage of work share. We're much more likely to talk to you about what we call swim lanes, saying for this kind of work, you're going to be our go-to company to provide that support. And I know that's more general, but you're more likely to get a large prime interested in talking to you about swim lane. What part am I going to play? And also we're going to want to establish that too, because we're not putting small businesses on teams randomly. In our small business participation plan and in our small business subcontracting plan, we have to explain who the companies are on the team and what role they'll play. So it's certainly reasonable to say, you know, what is my swim lane? What role am I going to play? If you say to me, I got to have 10% of the contract, I don't know. It depends on how valuable your expertise is. Occasionally that happens. Does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you very much. And again, Nancy, thank you so much for your time today. We do have a few more questions that we can take offline and answer when we email you the slides and the presentation. But I cannot stress enough, and we certainly advise our clients the same thing. Relationships, they take time. If you're going to reach out to the person the day you need them, that's not a relationship, it's a transaction. It takes a lot of patience to work on those relationships. And you certainly pointed that out. So again, Nancy, we appreciate your time today. All the participants, thank you for your time. Please reach out to Nancy. She's provided her contact information in the slides, but use all the advice she has given you so that she can be effective in helping your companies. Nancy, thank you so much.
Thank you, Rena, and thank you, audience, for sitting there so silently. I'm sure I'll hear from a few of you later, and that's okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you all.